Let's learn I-cord loops 3 different ways with my newest pattern, the Coffee Press Cozy. We have a buttoned up version and a slip-on version. The slip-on is made in the round on the knitting loom, and the buttoned up version is made on the knitting loom as well. As a beautiful cabled pattern with a linen stitch, and you can get all that information in the pattern. And today I'm going to show you how to make these 3 different loops, whether it's in the cast on or the bind off, or if you want to make the loop and then add it in as it is here. And we'll tell you more about what's inside this video here in a second, but I just want you to see that there are 3 different loops available, and you can use this for numerous projects, not just this one. So I hope you join us today and learn how to make I-cord loops here on Good Knit Kisses. Welcome to Good Knit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. To get the pattern, be sure and click down below for our blog, and you can get that 2-for-1 pattern with the slip-on and the short and tall sizes, and the button-up option in the short and tall sizes, as well as all of the materials you're going to need to do that. If you want to get the downloadable PDF, you'll want to visit our Etsy and Ravelry stores, and the link will be in that blog link if you want to get an ad-free version that, of course, is for sale on Etsy and Ravelry. So click that. We also have a right and left-handed video tutorial. We will learn the cast-on, so you can get the I-cord, and I'm going to show you 2 different cast-ons, whether you want to use a crochet hook and do the chain cast-on or do a long tail cast-on. And then we'll also show you how to do the bind off and incorporate another I-cord loop, as well as just make an I-cord loop if you want to make the one that's going to have 3 toggles on it instead of 2. That's our tall version, so I'll show you that as well. Let's do the chain cast-on. We're going to make a slip knot by wrapping that yarn around our finger twice, take the back loop over the front, and then back loop over the front again, and make that slip knot. It doesn't have to be a very long tail, it is going to be woven in. And we're just going to place that on the inside of our loom. Okay, and I'm going to put the yarn around my peg between my first and last stitch, and this is the working yarn. It's on the outside, and on the inside is my loop, and I'm just going to draw that in a little bit. Okay, so it's not a really large slip knot. Okay, we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook and pull it through that slip knot. And in this case, we only need 1 at first. We will be casting on more later, but for now, we're just going to make our I-cord. So now that you have your stitches on here, you can begin your I-cord. All right, I'm going to put the I-cord in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and do the long tail cast on so you can see how that begins. And then when we're going to cast on more stitches, I'll come back and show you adding more stitches with the chain cast on or the long tail cast on. All right, let's do this again. All right, let's make a long tail cast on, but first I want to show you why you would choose the long tail instead of the chain cast on. If you'll notice, I have a tail at the top here where my bind off is. That's exactly where I want to sew on my toggle, and it's at the other end of my loop, and it buttons in nicely. Now I want the same thing over here, but with the chain cast on, my tail, my beginning tail, is where my loop is, and I need it over here. So if you do the long tail cast on, it will be over here in the correct place it needs to be. You may need to tidy up the cast on a little bit, and I'll show you that later on, but it works out really well. I wanted you to see this before I sewed it up, but this is what it would look like if it was over here. So you would need to weave this in if you do the chain cast on, and then you need to add in more yarn in order to sew in your toggle. Okay, so we're going to just do 2 stitches and then start the I-cord, and then I will show you more of the long tail later on. First, what you need is a long tail. So get your measuring tape out and measure out 60 inches. So you're measuring out 60 inches of a tail, and then you're going to put in your slip knot. So wrap that yarn around your finger, pull the back loop over the front, and then do it again for a slip knot. The first thing you're going to do is put your working yarn towards the back, and you've got your tail towards you. I like to say ball to the back, tail towards. That's an easy way to remember for the long tail cast on. Put that slip knot on the very first stitch. All right, so the next thing you do is you're going to E-wrap the next stitch with the tail yarn. So E-wrap 1, And you can pull this tight, but we will tidy this up later on. And then we want to U-wrap knit with the ball or our working yarn. So U-wrap knit, just pull that with that hand, pull it taut, and knit over. And that is it. So you can continue to cast on after we get the I-cord done. I will show you how to do that, so have no fear. Just let this long tail sit here, and we're going to work on our I-cord next. Let's make an I-cord. Make sure and put your tail inside our loom. So just hang it back here. If you need to bring it under and out of the way, that's okay. Make sure and get it out of the way first so you don't get confused on where your working yarn is. So this is our yarn that's attached to our ball here. And on an I-cord, you're going to be constantly making the yarn come from the very most recent peg that you work all the way to the first peg. And we're just going to keep the yarn in the back and then bring it forward to work that very first row always in the same direction. So you're not going to be working back and forth. You are literally going to go all the way to the first peg, work your row, and then come back again. Go around the back to the first peg and work your row. So let's do that now. We're going to skip this first peg here, this one on this side, come to the back of the peg number 1 that's marked, go around the front, U-wrap knit, knit 1 stitch, and knit the second stitch. That's row 1. So you want to count off the side 1. Now you're going to come around and do that again. Okay, knit 1 and knit 2. That's 2 rows. And you're going to continue to do that until you have about 4 inches, which is going to be about 13 rows. Okay. So I've got row 3 and continue on. Row 4. Pause your video until you have 13 rows and I'll meet you back at the end. I have 13 rows, and if you are making it with the chain cast on, then what you need to do is stop before you follow my next instructions, and you're going to stop and go ahead and cast on all the remaining stitches, all 36. So the way you do that is you take this loop off and take our tool, our crochet hook, and hold it between the peg that it's on and the next peg. And actually you want to come around here. Let's see, get that yarn in front. All right, and then cast on. So we're going to wrap around our next peg, yarn over, pull through all the way, and just continue casting on. So we do have a video on the chain cast on if you need that for help. This is a little bit fast, but you can see how it's going to cast these on, and then you're going to place the loop. So I'm going to take this off and show the long tail cast on people how to place it. It's the same way to place it. So I'm going to undo this one. All right. And place this loop back on. Okay, so I'm ready for our long tail. So I'm going to grab my tail, and we're going to pull on it. We want to make a loop, and I'm going to go ahead and grab the actual tail back here and get all that out of the way and show you my I-cord. So you can see the I-cord is actually kind of square looking. So this flat side in the back, not the side, not this side, but this flat part that lines up, we're going to follow this down until we see our very last stitch here. We're going to pick it up and place it on our second peg. Okay, so whether you've got the chain or the long tail cast on, this is the one that you do, and you can place it on peg 2, and you're just going to leave it there and wait. So you're not going to actually knit it over until later. Okay, so for the long tail cast on, you're going to grab your tail now that you pulled it out, and you're going to pull it towards you again, because tail toward, and then we're going to E-wrap the next peg, and then U-wrap knit with the ball. Okay, so this yarn right here is going to be U-wrap knit, and knit that over, and then move on to your next one. So E-wrap the next peg with the tail, U-wrap knit with the ball, knit over, and tighten. Okay, So continue casting on that way until you get all the way to this last stitch, which is 36. Pause your video. I will see you at that point. See you soon. All right, so we've finished, and now you just start on your ribbing section. So you're going to be working back and forth. Remember that you're not connecting this area right here, and it's easy to tell because you've got your first and your last pegs marked. And when you finish your ribbing section, which starts with a purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2 all the way down, and finishes with a purl 1, knit 2, this second to last peg, you're just going to knit these 2 stitches over 1, and then that's it. So you're actually going to be working 6 rows with that pattern repeat going on. So when you work back in the other direction, it's going to be knit 2, purl 1, and so on. So you just work back and forth to get your nice ribbing section here. This one is the chain cast on. You can see what that looks like. This one here, just to show you, this one's done with the long tail cast on, and I've tidied up the edge. So if you want to compare the edges real quick, that's what that looks like. But yeah, you're going to be working back and forth. So see the video that we have with this pattern here. Even though it's in the round, you can see what the main pattern is. The difference is when you get to the linen section, I'm going to show you a video. There's a video link of working the linen in a flat panel. And then when you want to look at the area for making your cable, you're going to look at that video with it in the round, but you really just need to look at the round that has to do with just the twisting of the cable, and that's really it. And then when you get up to the section in the pattern where it calls to stop your repeats, then you're just going to be doing the ribbing section again. So when you get up to the ribbing section, you're going to work row 13, 14, 15, 16 in this pattern here, and then row 17 is where you're going to meet me again, and we will be working our I-cord again over on this side, and I will see you there. All right, we are at row 17, and we are at this end. We're working back in this direction, and we're going to begin as we had done our other odd rows. We're going to begin with our purl and then knit, knit, and you'll continue that on until you have 1 stitch remaining. So when you get down to here, you're just going to stop the second to last peg and leave this one remaining. Pause your video. I will meet you at that point. Okay, so we're ready to begin our I-cord at the bind off. I have 1 stitch remaining. We do not knit to the end. My working yarn is at the second to last peg, and we're going to slip this last stitch behind the peg. So we're just simply ignoring it. And now we're going to knit 2. So you're not necessarily starting a new row on this pattern that I'm working on, but you're going to work a full row this direction for a knit I-cord, just as we've done the I-cord previous. So we're just going to knit 2. Okay, and then our working yarn will be at the back of this stitch again, and then we slip and come back around and work our I-cord. Okay, same as before. So you're going to continue working this one until your desired length, or in my case for this pattern, I'm working it for about 4 inches, and this is actually about 13 rows on here. So go ahead and do that, count that many rows, and pause your video, come back, and I will show you how to continue on this row to pick up that stitch and make our loop. Okay. Okay, I've knit my 13 rows, and now we want to slip one again and knit just 1. So we're technically going to end up having about 14 rows on this of our I-cord. So we want to go ahead now and pick up a stitch and place it on here from this I-cord base. So turn it to the back here so you can see on the inside of your loom, and we're going to pick up this stitch here at the very base of our I-cord. Make sure you're getting the full stitch and place it. Okay. I'm going to place that right on peg 2. All right, so that's that one. All right, so we picked up the first stitch at the bottom of the I-cord, and that is between peg 2 and 3, and it was right there. So that's how I have it written in the instructions, placing it on peg 2, and now you are done with row 17. All right, so row 18, which is the last row, it is going to be slipping this first peg because we've technically already worked it, and now we're just going to knit 2 together. And then we're going to be binding off, okay? So we're knitting 2 together here, and then we bind off by picking up the stitch and moving it to the first, knitting over, and then moving it to the empty peg. Now we're going to continue binding off in pattern. Now I knit the 2 stitches together with the U-wrap knit, but for the remaining stitches or pegs, whenever it says purl, you're going to purl, and whenever you normally knit, you are going to E-wrap knit. So this particular one was a purl, and if you want to kind of cheat and see where you were, if it looks like this, that means that you purled, because this actually looks like a knit stitch back here, which is the opposite of a purl. So if you're not sure what the patterning is, just look at the back and go, oh, okay, purled on this one. So we're going to purl here, and then to bind off, you just the same as before, you place it on the previous stitch and knit over. And be careful right here not to pull on our yarn too much. We don't want to cause more tension. Okay, we want this to be a nice loose bind off to contain or remain stretchy. All right, so I've moved that over, and now we want to E-wrap these knit stitches. So E-wrap, pick it up, move it over, knit off. And that's all you need to do. So whether you're working on this pattern or something else, you're really just needing to make sure you pick up the end of that loop there, placing it on, knitting those 2 stitches together so you have a nice finished loop here on your project. So for this one, all you're going to do is finish binding off in pattern and pull through that very last stitch. And for bonus on this video, go ahead and pause your video, come back, and I will show you on the this design how to sew in the toggles, and also sew in and or make another I-cord for the middle and sew that all in. All right, I'll see you in a moment. Let's tidy up the edge of our long tail cast on. So here's my sample where I have the chain cast on, and then this is the long tail. But the long tail is really stretched out whenever it's on the loom, and then once it relaxes, it has a bit more yarn in there than I'd like. And so what we do is we start at the opposite end of the tail, and then we start pulling on these loose loops and work all the way down to this tail. This tail is going to get longer and longer, and then we'll be ready to sew in our toggles on this. So let's tidy it up, and this is going to be more of what it looks like after. So this is also a long tail cast on, and you can see how this edge looks very tidy, especially compared to our more stretchy bind off there. Okay, all right, so let's tidy this up. All right, so we can use a crochet hook. You can use the end of your loom tool, or you can use your fingers. I'm gonna find my loops that I wanna use. These are the loops, this nice loose loop here. I'm gonna tug on this one and see if that makes that looser. Okay, that's looser. All right, here we go. So I found my loop here that's right here. We tugged on that, made that loop tighter, and I'm going to pull on this one, and now I'm going to go on the next one. So this is with my fingers, okay, or I could use my tool or my crochet hook to pull on that. So you see how they're nice and loose. Let me move this around so you can see it. It's loose. I like using my fingers, especially with the larger yarn. So I don't want to pull it super tight, just to where it lays down nice and even like these other ones. Okay, so you'll see that these loops get longer and longer as we go. And if you pull it too tight, you can always go back the other direction and pull back on it, but you want to fix it before you end up weaving in your opposite tail. Okay, so you're going toward your tail, just slowly doing this. So go ahead and continue that on, and I'll meet you at the end. All right, we're on our last few stitches. Look at this really big loop. my original tail length, and one more loop here. All right. So this one is the one that came from this direction. This one is the one attached to my tail. You can see the tail start to move. So now we know we can pull on that tail. And there you go. It's like magic. And look how tidy that edge looks. Isn't that fantastic? And you're left with all this extra long tail, and now you can just cut it to a manageable length for weaving in your tails, or in this case, sewing in these toggles. All right, let's sew on some toggles. You can see that I've already sewn them on this sample here, and it was the chain cast on, and I had to weave in the tail that was back in the back here, and that's fine. So I just wove it in to where it was nice and secure. Actually pulled it through a couple of these side stitches and then pulled it over, and then wove it up my my ribbing to keep the consistency on the elasticity down here. And then over here, I used my tail that was at the top of my bind off. And then this tail here, I had to actually add it on. So I'm going to show you in a minute how to add a tail in. We'll do that on this middle one here. And let me show you how to use these tails that are here. So you do want to go down and over one stitch and one row. So grab your tapestry needle, and don't put your toggle on just yet. We want to, and this is the bind off edge, want to go down a stitch. I'm just going to kind of go down here in between this side of this stitch here, the little V, and go to the back. Okay, and then I want to come up to where it comes up underneath my bind off and over from the side. So I'm going to go in this little stitch right here in the corner. So I'm going to come up here, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and grab my toggle. Make sure, you know, your needle and yarn are compatible, and then your toggle will go through this little hole. Let me get another one. Or the needle will go through the toggle, I should say, and the yarn size. So we're going to pull that on through, and now we're going to go down, and we're going to go down a row here. We're going to keep in this column. We're going to go down a row here. So go through my toggle and then down all the way through the back and pull. And we want to go up and over and down again to secure. Make sure pull that taut. Okay, go through the back and through the toggle, and then down and through that hole again. All right, so now you've got your toggle on here, and we want to secure in the back. So you can go through the stitch behind here. There we go, getting all the strands through. And I meant to leave a little bitty hole, loop. So leave a loop at the end, and then you can just go through that loop to secure. Making sure to go through all strands. This yarn splits a little bit. Go through that and pull it. And then just weave in your tail as you normally would. Just going to go over here. Working my way over to this ribbing here. I'm going to come up along the side. And I like to go on the right side over here, so I'm just going to bypass and go underneath these two stitches here. Not going to the right side, just going underneath this little column. And then now we're going to go around the outside of these loops on the rib. And that's it. So just keep weaving in your tails and do the same at this point here. And go ahead and do that. Pause your video, come back. I'll show you how to add the loop in here, put the toggle in over here. All right, we're going to add a loop on to sew in our toggle. I've got a nice long strand, plenty of room for sewing. I've already added in my other toggle, and now we want to just find the middle. You can fold it in half and find that easily like that. Just fold it in half, pinch it, and I found the middle row sort of here. I'm going to go over one, and we're going to thread our needle. I've already got that done. I'm going to come up from the back. This is going to be the bottom of my row. Put my toggle on. pull through and leave a tail. This tail can obviously be a little bit shorter. You do need enough so that you can weave in the tail. And then we're going to go around this a couple times, just as we did before, making sure to just go up one row here, pull through, and come back through that part we did before, come up through the toggle, pull tight, go down. All right, so you're nice and tight with that. And now we want to get this one locked and secured in. You can place your tail here to secure it in, and then grab a loop on the other side of that. And so I'm just going to grab one of these stitches and pull here. Okay, and now I'm going to go through another stitch, and then I'm going to leave a loop and then go through the loop. All right, so that's nice and secure in. And now you just want to weave in your tails for this toggle. All right, let's jump to the next part in the video. Let's make a 2-stranded I-cord. I need another loop for my toggle on this pattern. I've already got my integrated loops, and now we want to add a third one right here in the middle. So we're going to begin by making our slip knot. We're only going to be working with 2 strands, or two pegs here. Make a nice long tail, because that's going to be used to sew in. So just pull, I don't know, 20 inches or so, just a nice long tail. And go ahead and make a slip knot, however you like. Place it on, and you're going to cast on 2 stitches. I'm going to use the long tail method. So tighten that up. I'm going to take my tail toward me, yarn at the back or ball at the back. I E-wrap with my tail, and I yarn over and U-wrap knit with my ball. Knit over, and I'm ready to begin. You could also do the chain cast on, whatever you like. Leave the tail out of the way, pull that out of the way, and work with our working yarn. And now we want to slip this first stitch and go behind to the peg with the stitch marker on it. If you don't have one on there, that's okay, but we're going to come into this opposite peg, wrap around, and we're going to knit these 2 stitches and knit just as I've shown you before, both stitches in the row. The working yarn is behind on the peg 2. We're going to slip that first stitch and come back around well, we're slipping the first stitch on this row, and we're coming around our main stitch with a stitch marker, come around and work a knit row. So that's 2. All right, and then we just continue on. It's 3 here, and so on. You can pull on your tail and get that I-cord out from there, and you get that nice square cord. Okay, so continue on until you've made the rows that you need to get the length you need. This is going to be about 4 inches, and in this one I am working actually 14 rows for this I-cord, approximately 4 inches, and then we're going to bind off. So I'll show you the bind off here in a second. Okay, so here you can actually bind off and pull through a nice long tail, or you can go ahead and make the loop before you take it off the loom. If you're more comfortable taking it off and sewing it on, that's fine, but let's go ahead and make this loop. So we're going to pick up the very last loop, okay? And this is at the bottom of our I-cord. Pick that up and place it onto our first peg in this case, and then we're going to pick up our peg 2 that we just worked and place it on top of peg 1. Okay, tighten up that, and now we're going to knit over 2 over 1. All right, now we're going to pull through and have a nice long strand. Okay, cut that. and we have a loop that's already together, and now we simply sew that in. So grab your project, and then you're just going to find the middle. You can just fold it over, find that middle real easily, and sew it in. That's all you need to do. All right, you know how to weave in a tail now, right? Okay, now let's do it together. So we're going to grab our tail, grab the mark spot here. We're going to go inward. I'm actually going to go on this particular one. I'm going to go in one full spot and then come down. And I want to position this to look similar to these other ones. So see how it's kind of coming over like those? All right, so we want to position that right. And then we're going to come up from the back. I'm going to grab some of this I-cord here. I'm going to come up through this stitch here and through this stitch here. Pull through. I split my yarn a little bit, so let's fix that. Okay, so now when I pull downward and we go over one row, it should lock that in better. Let's get that tail out of the way. Okay. You can see how that imitates the length of these other ones. So if I went over too far, it would have stuck out more than the other ones. So we want to make it nice and even. So now I can come in and come up from the inside of this loop and secure that in place. Okay. And I'm just going to go in between these stitches and come down. Like that. Okay, and then you can weave in the tail in the back, and then let's grab this one here and go ahead and just come down, and then you don't really have to secure it in anymore because it's already there. So I'm going to come around and follow where I had gone down before. And now let's look at the front. So it looks nice and tidy. It matches those other ones, and now you just need to weave it in on the back. Well, here it is, the final result. We've got our 3 toggles and 3 I-cord loops just buttoned in for a nice finished look. And then on this one here, I've got shorter toggles. And so because my yarn is super bulky, I decided to build up my buttons or toggles by sewing it in as normal and then wrapping the yarn around twice before going back down again. So it builds up a little bit of height because it doesn't stick out very far here. So I get the fun look and it still is secure and it's not going to come off. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, and you got these patterns. Feel free to have fun, mix it up, make it your own, and enjoy using this technique for other patterns out there and other things you'd like to make. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.